Chapter 6, Shattered Trust. Rhea sat alone in her modest apartment, her mind swirling with confusion and doubt. What had once been uncertainty had morphed into something far more unsettling, suspicion. It gnawed at her constantly, turning her frustration into a simmering anger. The cryptic message from Ravi, the silence from Samir, the vague instructions, it all felt like a carefully orchestrated game. And now, she couldn't shake the unsettling thought that Samir, the man she loved, was somehow playing her. Samir said, "Initiate a meeting," Ravi had relayed, his voice robotic, as if merely a messenger in this tangled web. But what meeting was she supposed to initiate? How was she to reach out when all communication between her and Samir had been severed, when they weren't even allowed to speak? She wanted to trust Samir, to believe in the love they shared, but the doubts had started to erode her confidence. Samir was powerful, wasn't he? So why wasn't he doing anything to protect her? Why wasn't he meeting her as he had promised? The whispers circulating around the office only fueled her growing doubts. The rumor mill had one constant refrain: Samir is behind it all. He's asking her to resign. It wasn't just idle gossip anymore, it was a shared belief, voiced in hushed tones. At first, Rhea had fiercely defended Samir in her mind. There was no way, he loved her. He would never allow something like this to happen. But as the days passed, and the silence from Samir stretched on, her conviction began to waver. Why hadn't he reached out to explain what was happening? Why was he letting her hang in limbo, allowing this situation to spiral out of control? Could he really be just like every other powerful man, manipulating the situation to suit his own needs? Her chest tightened at the thought. Perhaps he was no different, after all, using his influence to get what he wanted, then discarding her once she had outlived her usefulness. It was a thought she had resisted, but the more she dwelled on it, the more it made sense. People like him could control others with ease, walk away without a second thought, and leave chaos in their wake. And now, his failure to meet her, to fight for her, seemed like a glaring sign of betrayal. Rhea's phone buzzed, pulling her back to reality. An unknown number flashed on the screen. The voice on the other end delivered a message that sent her into a cold panic: she would be stopped from entering the office the next day. Her heart raced as the gravity of the situation hit her. What were they planning? Why was this happening? In desperation, she fired off a message to Samir, her hands shaking as she typed. "I just got a call. They said I won't be allowed to enter the office tomorrow. What's happening?" The message went out, but as soon as it did, doubt washed over her once more. Was Samir really powerful enough to protect her? Or was he just another player in this game, a game that had cost her everything? A part of her still wanted to believe in him, but his silence made it increasingly difficult to cling to that hope. Meanwhile, Samir was battling his own demons. When he read Rhea's message about the phone call, a wave of panic coursed through him. He couldn't let her face this alone. Without hesitation, he dialed Ravi, his trusted confidant, who still had contacts within the office. He needed to know what was happening and how he could shield Rhea from the worst of it. But he didn't send a message back to her. He felt paralyzed, trapped between the fear of putting her in further danger and the overwhelming urge to protect her. Each passing moment weighed heavily on him, the pressure building like a suffocating force. Every word, every action, felt like it could be weaponized, twisted against them. As he waited for Ravi's response, the confines of his mansion felt stifling. The ghosts of his decisions loomed large, and he was terrified, not just for Rhea, but for himself. The fear that Arvind had instilled in him was a shadow he couldn't shake, a darkness threatening to consume everything he cared about. When Ravi finally called back, his tone was serious, guarded. "Samir, I heard what's happening with Rhea. They're trying to isolate her. You need to move quickly." Samir clenched his jaw, his determination hardening. He couldn't let this happen to Rhea. "What should I do?" he asked, his voice edged with urgency. Start gathering evidence. If you can expose the corruption behind this, it might give her a way out. But you need to be discreet. Arvind has eyes on everything. The thought of going against Arvind's web of influence sent a chill through Samir, but he felt a flicker of hope. If he could find a way to uncover the truth without putting Riya at further risk, they might stand a chance. Thanks, Ravi. I'll figure something out, Samir replied, resolve firm in his voice. He hung up, knowing the path ahead would be treacherous. But he was ready to fight for Riya, ready to step into the shadows and confront the forces that had trapped them both. But then came the final blow. Arvind had made his move. Riya's termination came not with a personal conversation or a face-to-face meeting, but in the form of a cold, impersonal email. The sender, a junior manager she had once outranked, hadn't even bothered to copy Samir on it. That absence felt like another betrayal. How could Samir not be involved in such a monumental decision? He was the one who could have stopped this, at least, that's what she had believed. Riya stared at the email in shock, her heart pounding. The anger, hurt, and betrayal bubbled over. Samir's inaction stung the most. He had the power to prevent this, and yet, he had done nothing. Her hands trembled as she typed a furious message to Samir. I am terminated. I hope it is with your permission. The words hit the screen with venom, each one loaded with the pain she had kept bottled up for days. She sent the message without a second thought, her mind awash with rage and confusion. Could Samir really have let this happen? Was this his way of pushing her out of his life without having to face her? The thought was unbearable. The man she had loved, trusted, believed in, had he orchestrated all of this from the shadows, watching her life fall apart? Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at her phone, waiting for a response. But deep down, she wasn't even sure she wanted one anymore. All she knew was that the man she had thought would stand by her had let her down in the worst way possible. And now, she was left to pick up the shattered pieces of her life, wrecked by a betrayal she hadn't seen coming. If you were in Riya's position, would you confront Samir directly or wait for an explanation? Do you think he's betraying her, or is he trapped by circumstances? How do power dynamics affect personal and professional relationships? Do you think Samir is using his influence to manipulate Riya? Samir's silence adds to Riya's doubts. How important is communication in preventing misunderstandings in relationships, especially in situations like this? Have you ever experienced a situation where workplace politics or corruption affected you or someone close? How did it impact your decisions? Riya suspects Samir might be using her as a pawn. How can you tell if someone genuinely cares for you or is manipulating you in a relationship? See you again with Chapter 7, Silent Whispers of Love.